There comes a moment in life that doesn't arrive with drama. You don't wake up crying. You don't wake up anxious. You don't even wake up sad. You just wake up tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, not the kind rest touches. A deeper tiredness, one that lives quietly in your chest, in your breath, in the space behind your eyes. You go through the day, you smile when needed, you answer when spoken to, you function, but inside, something feels worn down, and you begin asking questions you never asked before. Why does everything feel heavier now? Why do I need more quiet than I used to? Why do my emotions feel closer to the surface? And then comes the hardest question. Is something wrong with me? Let me tell you this gently. Before we go any further, nothing is wrong with you. This is not weakness. This is not failure. This is not losing control. This is what happens when a heart that has been strong for decades finally reaches a moment of honesty. A moment where it whispers, I cannot carry life the same way anymore. And tonight, we are going to listen to that whisper. 1. Emotional tiredness does not appear suddenly. Emotional tiredness does not arrive overnight. It doesn't crash into your life. It doesn't demand attention. It accumulates, quietly, politely, over years. It builds from moments you barely noticed at the time. The times you stayed calm when you wanted to cry. The times you showed strength because someone depended on you. The times you pushed your own feelings aside to keep life moving. You didn't do this because you were taught how to care for yourself. You did it because you had to. You learned early that life rewards endurance. That stability matters more than expression. That being strong keeps things from falling apart. And so you became strong. You carried responsibility. You carried families. You carried relationships. You carried grief quietly. You carried disappointment silently. And the world praised you for it. But your heart kept record. Even when you moved on, your heart remembered. Emotional tiredness is not about age. It is about loyalty. Loyalty to people. Loyalty to roles. Loyalty to survival. 2. Why emotional weight feels heavier with age. As the years pass, something important changes. Life slows. Not always by choice, but by reality. And when life slows, feelings surface. When you were younger, there was no time to feel deeply. There were responsibilities waiting, decisions to make, problems to solve. Emotion had to wait. But now, there is space. And space is powerful, because space invites memory. Not memory as stories, but memory as feeling. A smell doesn't just remind you of a place. It brings back the weight of a season of your life. A song doesn't just recall a moment. It brings back who you were when you heard it. This can feel overwhelming, not because you're fragile, but because you are no longer numb. Your emotions feel heavier now because they are no longer buried. This is not decline. This is truth finally having room to breathe. 3. The loneliness that quietly drains the heart. Loneliness in later life is rarely loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't panic. It settles in. It lives in absence. In people who are no longer here. In routines that disappeared without goodbye. In conversations that never finished. It's sitting in a room full of memories and realizing the room feels quieter than it used to. This loneliness can exist even when you're not alone. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. You can talk all day and still feel unheard. Because what's missing isn't company. It's shared history, shared understanding, shared depth. And carrying that quiet absence day after day tires the heart. Not because you are needy, but because connection has always mattered to you. 4. Grief you postponed to survive. One of the heaviest burdens older hearts carry is grief that was delayed. Not avoided, delayed. Because when life demanded strength, grief had to wait. This grief is not only about death, it is about dreams you set aside, paths you didn't take, versions of yourself you had to leave behind, words you never said because it wasn't the right time. You didn't ignore this grief, because you didn't care. You ignored it because you had responsibilities. Now, with fewer distractions, those emotions return, not to punish you, but to be acknowledged. This is not your heart breaking. This is your heart asking to be witnessed. 5. Identity fatigue. The tiredness no one names. There is another layer of emotional tiredness that few people talk about. Identity fatigue. For decades, you have been someone: the provider, the caretaker, the problem solver, the dependable one. These identities helped you survive. But carrying an identity for too long without rest exhausts the soul. At some point, the heart asks, who am I when I stop performing strength? That question alone can be tiring. Emotional tiredness often comes when you are no longer willing to carry a role that no longer fits. 6. The nervous system after decades of endurance. Your nervous system remembers everything. Years of staying alert, years of managing stress, years of being needed. Even when life becomes quieter, your system doesn't immediately relax. It stays on guard. This is why emotional tiredness can feel physical. Tight chest, shallow breath, heavy limbs. Your body is saying, I've been on duty for a long time. This is not something to fight. It is something to soothe. 7. Gentle ways to care for a tired heart. You don't heal emotional tiredness by pushing through. You heal it by slowing down. Speak to yourself out loud. Your nervous system needs to hear kindness. Say, I've carried enough. I don't need to be strong right now. Allow emotions without fixing them. Not every feeling needs an answer. Create rituals of safety, warm tea, sunlight, stillness. Write to release, not to analyze. And each night say, my heart did enough today. A truth for those who have lived deeply. If your heart feels tired, if your emotions feel closer to the surface, if you need more quiet than before, please know this. You are not fading. You are not failing. You are not weak. You are someone who lived deeply. And depth leaves weight. Place your hand on your chest and whisper, I am allowed to rest now. Your emotional tiredness is not the end of your strength. It is the beginning of your gentleness. And gentleness is the final wisdom of a life well lived.